And then a 20-bar verse destabilizes the song until at last Bowie hits the ground with a Bo Diddley beat and riffing guitars and harmonica.
Mhm.
After a last yelp, Bowie lets his players jam for 2 minutes, the harmonica back in the riffs, or Tim Rennick and Keith Christmas solo on electric guitar, and even a horn section stumbles in towards the fade out.
Mhm. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy's John, and it's time to dig into some music. John, you are going to be offering me up an artist and track to go off and peep, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about it at length. Where are we going today, my friend?
So we're going back to the well with Mr. David Bowie.
Haha, okay, excellent.
Now, unlike our previous jazz funk odysseys, a la REM, and currently with PJ Harvey and Nick Cave. Um, well, yeah, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds is a bit unstructured as well. I'm just randomly picking stuff, and this is what I'm going to do with Bowie. And the good thing about Bowie is it's almost like each album was almost an ituration, so you can just go into it and know a bit about what's around it. But that thing is of an episode, as it were.
Yeah.
So I'm just randomly pulling stuff about Bowie. So here's one for you to see what you think. I think it's an interesting one. It's called Unwashed and somewhat slightly dazed.
Oh, only somewhat slightly dazed.
Yes.
Okay.
Very
Somewhat and
British.
slightly. Okay, cool. Well, that's an interesting title. Let me run off, give this thing a listen. I'm always intrigued to hear some Bowie that I'm not familiar with. And I'll come back and let you know what I think of it, buddy.
Bright smile, pretty girl, I see you see me through your window. Don't turn your nose up, well you can if you need to, you won't be the first or last. It must strain you to look down so far from your father's house. And I know what a louse like me in his house could do for you.
Okay, so it starts off with these really pretty lush acoustic chords. And they're really full. It sounds like there's more to it. I don't know. There's this depth and richness to the acoustic that I find really I don't know, kind of enchanting because it's just got this full, lovely sound to it. Then you get these like shots of electric guitar notes, it sounds like, kind of accenting it a little bit before things kind of fully develop. Bowie joins singing, great voice as always. Um, and it sounds like as the song progresses, even after the drums kick in, that there's this narrative going on where like Bowie's talking about catching the attention of a woman in her, I don't know, her father's house or something like that. Sounds like she's like well to do. There's this allusion to like looking down your nose at me or something like that, which, you know, you think instantly I'm led to think of like classism, like she's higher up and looking down on him, despite this odd attraction she might have to him. Um, and you know, he's a bit self-deprecating. I think he called himself a louse at one point. So I think he recognizes this and is acutely aware of it. So interesting start to the narrative. I think I'm kind of getting the idea of it at this point. But yeah, drums come in, they sound great. They're doing their job. Electric guitar, doing some really great stuff. Obviously love the acoustic. Let's see where it goes from here.
And the cream of the great utopia dream, and you're
right, bass. I like how he's delivering his lines, and the guitar is sort of accenting by doing that little bit right after each line. It just makes it kind of playful and bouncy. Cool stuff. Ooh. I love the choppy guitar and that harmonica coming in there to kind of like smooth the edges around that. That's great. Let's take this back a little bit. All right, I hate to keep pausing it, but the lyrics now at this point are getting a bit more abstract and less easy to identify and then create a narrative around. I don't know what some of the bits I'm catching are confusing. The bits I'm not catching are only that much more confusing as far as like what exactly they mean. And in some cases, what exactly he's saying, but it does sound good. I'd love to know what this is about when we get to it. I thought I had a pretty good idea, but he's talking about murders in his brain or something like that, and I just don't know. But it does sound really great. This is great.
Now you run from your window to the porcelain bowl, and you're sick from your ears to the red pocket floor of the broken wall. Slides down your front and eats through your belly. It's very catchy. So now you should spend the morning lying to your bicycle wide amazed. Who's about the same unwashed and happily fight today?
That's great. A guitar back there. horns. Oh man. Yeah. Oh, there's horns there. Great. Yeah, this was a really great listen. That jam was fucking incredible there, last couple minutes of the song. Really good stuff. Interesting lyrics. They didn't all make sense to me, but they were still really cool and evocative. And I'm wondering what exactly they're painting a picture of. Sort of started off with this idea of like this odd mutual attraction between two people who are in very different parts of society. And maybe that is where it went, but the lyrics became a lot more abstract and interesting as the song progressed. Um, but interestingly enough, they kind of matched the title of like this unwashed and somewhat slightly dazed. They sound like the words of someone who would fit that description, perhaps. Um, yeah, really great music. I mean, this was all cobbled together really well. Arrangement was key in the song. I loved the nods to bluesy guitar with this and the harmonica commingling with it. Sounded fabulous. This is a bit less avant-garde than our last dalliance with Bowie. But there were still like shades of that in this, even though this stuck a bit more to a traditional script. You could still see how he would end up where he did, and kind of his different the ways he likes to play with sound. Um, and even the subject matter and the lyrics are a little off the wall too, but in the best way, right? Yeah, I'd love to learn a bit more about the meaning of the song, particularly some of these lyrics, those that I caught, and even more the ones that I didn't. But yeah, great lush acoustic strumming. Has this like the chords also have this like choppy nature to it, which again I kind of rounded off throughout some of the parts by what some of the other instruments do to complement that kind of like choppy rhythm at points throughout the song. Really fun listen, really cool song. I'd love to learn more about it. Let's get back to John.
Richard Whetstone is back. So you've had listened to Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed by Mr. Bowie. What do you reckon?
Yes. I reckon a lot. So the song kicks off with some like strumming of an acoustic guitar, and I gotta say the sound of this acoustic is full. Like there's a lot to it. It's like denser. And each strum has some added richness to it. And there are these really pretty bright notes on the electric guitar that shine through every now and again as well. It's an interesting little dynamic here between the two different kinds of guitars. Yeah.
Excuse me. Point of order. Just to say that this was a 12 string.
Oh, well, that
acoustic.
explains the fuller sound.
Yeah, the sort of resonance of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he used it to greater effect in another album later on in his career. But yeah,
Okay.
you're completely right with this sort of dynamic between the acoustic and the electric.
Yeah. And the
This is
fuller
the
sound of the
beginning.
acoustic, it makes so much more sense now knowing that it's a 12 string, as well.
And this is the beginning of one of Bowie's sort of he does that. This is the first song he does it on.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Cool. Well, that's neat to learn. And then enter Bowie's vocals. And it would appear that he's caught the eye of a well-to-do young lady, perhaps one a bit out of his league, or just in a completely different league. And she seems not accustomed to Bowie's type, at least through the lyrics that I'm picking up in this like sort of opening salvo of lyrics to the song. Perhaps it's a gap in class, as he mentioned something about her turning her nose up or looking down her nose, something to that effect, right? As he mentions, he also mentions something about her being in her father's house and looking down. So there's all this, you're picking, this is why I'm getting class from it. Like she's in a
Yeah.
really nice house looking down at him. So there's a bit where he refers to himself as a louse, also, a bit self-deprecating, putting himself on a different playing field than her elevated status, it would appear. So all this is giving me kind of this Lady in the Tramp type dynamic between the two characters. Here we have. Um, and during this part, the rhythm becomes more chugging, and the drums become more present, and the guitars chop a bit more at the chords that they're playing, and the electric provides a flourish of a few notes every now and again. Nice way of accenting things. Then the song shifts again with more of these electric guitar flourishes at the end of each line, and that Bowie delivers, and it sort of picks up a bit. He delivers this line about having eyes in his backside. Weird, but I wouldn't expect any less from Bowie. And then I'm pleasantly surprised to hear that its delivery is now accented by a bit of harmonica rather than the lead guitar. So there's a little bit of a switch here, and I wasn't expecting a harmonica, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. And I should say that much like the line about eyes in this backside, the rest of this verse doesn't make as much sense to me as the opening bit did. I was able to pick up more of a like a direct narrative, and this seems a bit more abstract lyrically. And this is where I get probably reminders of how avant-garde he can be sometimes, whether it's music or lyrics or whatever. It's always it can always go a little outside the box with Bowie, and we are lyrically firmly outside of the box with this, because I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? I was like, I really thought I had a clue, and now I have no idea what the song is on to. But it sounds really good, and it sounds really cool. But I haven't a fucking clue what he's on about. He mentions electric. I don't even know if I'm right here. Electric tomatoes, credit card rye bread, and a head full of murders, among other things. And it sounds like he's on his way to making a pretty good BLT until he gets to that head full of murders business. And I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? You can't eat that.
The secret sauce.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what you Brits are always talking about with brown sauce. It's just a little murder thought. So needless to say, you're gonna have to throw me a bone about like the meaning of these lyrics, because I think what I originally thought may be off the table. Although given the title and his explicit declaration of being an unwashed and somewhat slightly dazed, perhaps this isn't meant to make much sense, or it's perhaps an illustration of who the narrator, or a reminder of who the narrator is. Then around the 2:30 marker, things kick off with some yelps and a bluesy electric guitar, and more of that, just that killer harmonica work. And this is all really quite good. The solos then give way to a third verse, in which again, there's this punctuation of like choppy guitar chords, harmonica, and then the occasional flourish on the electric guitar. After the verse and another chorus, we get more amazing harmonica and stellar guitar work, and this jams out for quite a bit, and I'm totally like on board for all of the remainder of the song. It's just great. Sounds so good. As the jam progresses, we inch closer to the end. Then there appears some horns blasting away. It sounded like a saxophone, but then also the lower bit sounded maybe like a trumpet. I don't know if it was both or one of those two things. But yeah, they're commingling awesomely. The harmonica sounded really great with the horns as well. It just added all this poppiness to it, so yeah, it sounded incredible. Another unexpected bit of the song were these horns, because like I was caught off guard by the harmonica, and now I'm getting horns. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know I was getting all this. This sounds great. And it also illustrates how well organized and cobbled together and arranged the song is. It sounds so cool. So the recording quality of was definitely indicative of the era the song was released, I think, right? This isn't the all the bells and whistles we get with modern production work, and that's okay. It adds to the charm of the song, and it also adds to this authenticity of the song as well. The music in this track really stands out, particularly again like how it was arranged and put together. I also enjoyed Bowie's vocal delivery throughout it, even the bits where the vocalizing is like almost like yelping. Doesn't do it a lot, but every once in a while it's like, what the hell was that? That wasn't a word, I don't think. That lends to this like to the energy of the song. And I don't have much of a clue as like again about the lyrics, especially after the initial lyrics in the opening bit. But at the same time, it lends itself to the title, and it makes your mind wonder what kind of person we're dealing with here, from a narrator standpoint. And God knows Bowie can create some interesting narratives in his lyrics. So, I'd be interested to learn a bit more of what it's about, if there is like information about there of what inspired it or what the song is about, because there are some really abstract like that all the credit card rye bread and shit like that. I don't know what the hell he's on about. So yeah, tell me more about this song, and sort of the era of Bowie this came out. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this is earlier than the sort of avant-garde piano track that we listened to before, the Aladdin Sane. So yeah, tell me more, please.
Yeah, great. So I will say before I get into all the information, just why I picked this and everything. This is early Bowie. In fact, he brought out two albums at the start of his career, both called David Bowie. And aficionados argue whether they're real albums or not because they're kind of cobbled together. But of course they are.
Right.
So, this is a real gateway sort of beginning of what Bowie would become. And you see it within the song, actually, sort of shifting from one thing to another. I just think it's a really interesting song. And it's an album track. It's not very well known, but it's got something about it which is interesting. It shows where he was thinking from and where he's going to as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I mentioned, this is the second track from David Bowie's second album. After the commercial and critical failure of his 1967 debut, self-titled debut, Bowie moved away from this. That it's the one you see. It's a picture of him with his sort of fringe haircut, big head, and it's that sort of baroque pop and music hall. So heavily influenced by Anthony Newley and sort of faux Scott Walker, but nowhere near. So he moves now towards more folk rock and into psychedelia. His manager, Kenneth Pitt, suggested they do a promotional film to sort of, show him off to potential record labels and to fans as well and introduce him. And they did this, and it became called Love You Till Tuesday, but it never actually got released until 1984. It's not that great. The title track, I remember, Love You Till Tuesday, but it's all right. But within all this stuff at the time, he wrote a song about a fictional astronaut. That song was called Space Oddity. And sometimes it's all about timing. The song was influenced by Kubrick's film the previous year in 68, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which we had actually been talking about off camera last week.
Yeah.
Bowie secured a deal with Mercury Records based on the demo of Space Oddity, and it gave him finances to, record his second album. So Tony Visconti, who became his longtime producer collaborator, saw this track, Space Oddity, as a novelty record, and he passed over production to the engineer Gus Dudgeon. They rushed it through to make sure it was released before the moon landing. So it came out on July the 11th, 1969, and the Apollo 11 moon landings were on July the 20th. It became Bowie's first hit. It got to number 5 in the UK charts in 1969. It was then re-released later, and it became his first hit in the States, and it got to number 15 in the Billboard charts in 1973. It then became Bowie's first single in the UK when it was re-released again in 1975.
Oh.
It became his first number one. And it was released again in 1983 for some reason, 2013, and then in 2016 after Bowie's death, and it recharted then as well. So, yeah, that's the setup for the album, okay? For this song, you have a David Bowie lead vocal, Keith Christmas, 12-string acoustic guitar, Mick Wayne, lead guitar, Tim Renwick, rhythm guitar, John Lodge, bass, John Cambridge, drums, Benny Marshall, harmonica. It says unknown musicians, saxophones and trumpets.
Oh, okay.
and Tony Visconti producing. So this is the first song that Bowie and Visconti did together,
Okay.
as presented. So this album, also called David Bowie, and the actual original is a sort of picture of his head behind this sort of lattice work of this green sort of grid.
Yeah.
It's rubbish. It's absolutely, you've seen it before, thumbnails. It's rubbish cover. There you go. But yeah, it contains like folk rock, psychedelia rock songs, and had lyrical themes that were influenced by events happening in Bowie's life, including former relationships and festivals he attended. The album was a commercial failure due to a lack of promotion, despite receiving positive reviews from the critics. For its release in the States, Mercury retitled the album Man of Words, Man of Music. They meant to just put that as a little catch line, but it became the title, and they used different artwork. So the album itself got mixed reviews in later decades, many finding the critics finding a problem with the cohesiveness of the album. But Bowie himself later stated it lacked musical direction. Debate still continues as to whether it's just David Bowie's first proper album. According to the biographer David Buckley, Bowie based the music on the dominant styles of the times rather than developing a distinct music of his own, which he, of course, later did. Keith Cam, another biographer, finds the music encompasses a fusion of acoustic folk leanings with growing interest in electric rock. And Cam continues that David Bowie, number 2, marked a turning point in the artist and that lyrically he began to draw on life rather than writing winsome stories. AllMusic wrote Space Oddity aside, this album can possess very little in the way of commercial songs, and the ensuing album emerged as a dense, even rambling excursion through the folky strains that were the last glimmering of British psychedelia. Record Collector said Space Oddity may be regarded as singer's first proper album, because it's called that as well, though its mishmash of styles and strummy experiments suggest he was still trying to settle on an identity. But yeah, and the biographer Nicholas Pegg calls the album a remarkable step forward from anything Bowie had recorded before. He highlights Unwashed and somewhat slightly Dazed, Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud, and Signet Committee as showcasing Bowie's evolution as a lyricist, but ultimately believes that the monolithic reputation of Space Oddity does the album more harm than good. So, in 1972, as part of a reissue campaign by RCA in the wake of the commercial breakthrough of Ziggy Stardust, David Bowie, number 2, was repackaged with the title Space Oddity. And that's what you see in the frame behind me. So it's a contemporary photograph from sort of Ziggy times of Bowie there, and it's actually called Space Oddity. So that's why I've got that in the frame. It's the same album. And the sleeve notes proclaimed that the album was now then and is still now. Personal and universal, perhaps galactic, microcosmic, and macrocosmic, whatever that means. So the lyrics, and then I'll get into a bit about the song. Spy, spy, pretty girl, I see you through your window. Don't turn your nose up. Well, you can if you need to. You won't be the first or last. It must strain you to look down so far from your father's house. And I know what a louse like me in his house could do for you. I'm the cream of the great utopia dream, and you're the gleam in the depths of your banker's spleen. I'm a phallus in pigtails, and there's blood on my nose. This is where it sort of picks up.
Yeah.
And my tissue is rotting where the rats chew my bones. And my eye socket's empty. See nothing but pain. I keep having this brainstorm about 12 times a day. So now you could spend the morning walking with me, quite amazed, as I'm unwashed and somewhat slightly dazed. I got eyes on my backside. Let's see electric tomatoes. On credit card rye bread. There are children in washrooms holding hands with a queen. And my head's full of murders where only killers scream. Now you could spend the morning talking with me, quite amazed. Look out, I'm raving mad and somewhat slightly dazed. And then you get the harmonica sort of solo, and then the brass coming in.
Yeah.
Now you run from your window to the porcelain bowl, and you're sick from your ears to the red parquet floor, and the brack on the wall slides down your front and eats through your belly It's very catching. So now you should spend the mornings lying to your father, quite amazed about the strange, unwashed, and happily slightly dazed. And then we get this vocalization and jamming out for about 2 minutes where he just,
Yeah.
it's great. So, from a really good website called Pushing Ahead of the Dame, which does David Bowie song by song. And they wrote on this. In late July 1969, while David Bowie was performing at the Maltese Song Festival, his father, Hayward John Jones, took ill. He died soon after Bowie returned to England. Jones had been a source of great stability, financial and emotional, for Bowie in the 60s, and his death, coming at the same time as Bowie was breaking up with his long-time manager, Kenneth Pitt. The film obviously didn't work out, as well as ditching many of his old friends, left Bowie angry and withdrawn. Bowie later told George Tremlett that Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed was his attempt to capture the surreal feeling of the weeks after his father's death.
Mm.
Unwashed, however, seems more about class anxiety and Dylan worship than anything else. Bowie told an interviewer in late 69 that an inspiration for the title came from the funny stares he got on the streets. And critics like Nicholas Pegg suggest the song also seems to be revisiting the Hermione Farthingale breakup. So this was a relationship he had in real life. Farthingale was of a higher class than Bowie and allegedly didn't approve of his pop music leanings. And the song is in part a dig at a girl with a red parquet floor and brack painting on her wall. You'd have a few dollars to be able to afford that. I love brack painting. So yeah, they continue writing. The song is a slow reduction, moving from complexity and nuance down to hard basics, and seems symbolically, if not intentionally, to be Bowie throwing over folk music for hard rock. It opens with a 12-string acoustic, Bowie's dreamy vocal, and the occasional sweep of electric guitar, which suggests it will be another delicate, rambling folk song. And then a 20-bar verse destabilizes the song until at last Bowie hits the ground with a Bo Diddley beat and riffing guitars and harmonica.
Mhm.
After a last yelp, Bowie lets his players jam for 2 minutes, the harmonica back in the riffs, while Tim Rennick and Keith Christmas solo on electric guitar, and even a horn section stumbles in towards the fade out. It's a nice little write-up, and I think, and this is one of the reasons why I picked it, because you can hear, especially with that sort of, you call it the chorus or whatever, where he says, let's go back to the word. So you can spend the morning walking with me, quite amazed as I'm on Washington somewhat slightly days. He sounds like Dylan as he's scanning that line.
Yeah.
And it's clearly a lot of Dylan that he's really fond of in there. But it's moving away from that. As he's right, it starts like a folky song and it ends a sort of
Yeah, it ends a completely different thing.
yeah, a rock, and that's the sort of music he's moving towards from this sort of folk singer, from this Anthony Newley wannabe folk singer, and now into something else. And it's the start of his progression, and I think it's a real gateway song. This, yeah, it's cool. It's not like his his best stuff. It's not Heroes or Suffragette City.
No, but it does a really good job of illustrating, and it's funny because you used this word earlier, kind of laughingly, microcosm. It is like a microcosm of like how his music is going to progress from where it was before the song was written to where it will be on subsequent albums beyond it. So that's interesting choice, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and again, if you think about it, in the space from here, 4 years, the change he go through.
Yeah,
Ziggy, Aladdin Sane, and prior to that as well, is Hunky Dory as well. It's amazing, and truly prolific. So this is a great sort of changing point. Person, and having your father die as well is going to really affect and screw up your head.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of mishmash of a couple of narratives going through there, that how he feels. Plus, he's sort of like getting his licks in onto an old relationship and slagging her off as well.
Yeah, I picked up more on that. It was when he started to get into the sandwich ingredients and the weird descriptors thereof that it kind of lost me a little bit. But even the part where she's getting sick in the bathroom, like I'm like, okay, he's back to talking about this woman again. But the other part was like, what the fuck? But it was interesting and I liked it. It sounded really great.
Yeah. And again, it's funny the guy said that. I mean, it struck me listening to it. Again, just hearing the dink, 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 I think Bo Diddley every time straight away. And there's loads of other artists have done that, and it's probably like Buddy Holly would be another one. But
yeah,
I just think Bo Diddley straight away. and so did the guy writing this website. So yeah, just thought it'd be a cool little sort of snippet of early Bowie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
Excellent.
choice.
Well, I shall wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, I was listening to this and I want to change the lines at the end and somewhat slightly underpaid. Don't know why, but I always want to put those lyrics in. But please, if you like this, do hit the like button. And drop a line. Tell us what you think. Fans of Bowie, fans of early Bowie. Perhaps you like his Antley Newley impersonation. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. And all this meaty goodness could be yours 5 days a week, as the Beatles never sung. We would appreciate everybody who supports the channel. That being said, thanks again so much for watching. And we'll see all of you in the next episode of The Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.